Hello there, Vic Benedict here. We're playing God of War 2018 on Give Me God of War difficulty, and this is my guide and walkthrough for the hardest difficulty. We are currently on part 8, and we have some ascending to do. So I think it's amazing that at this point in time, I did want to mention that I'm very pleased with the reception this guide has gotten, and I appreciate everybody's support, and more will follow because this is a very long game. So I'm going to put several of these sections in fast forward, starting with this one. We've got a few traps to get through, and then we've got a fight that has a bad checkpoint at the first part of it, but it gives you a checkpoint very soon after the fight, and it kind of makes up for what would have been an inexcusable checkpoint. So there is a hack silver chest over to the right, which you can pick up after. I guess after would be best over here, because you have a couple of projectile jogger over here. So what you would probably be best served by doing is to stay behind here and use the third-person cover trick to stand behind here and just charge up your axe and throw it at the jogger. And make sure when you're charging it, wait for the axe to glint, and then when you throw it, you'll deal the maximum amount of damage. Aim for their heads, and you notice that when it makes contact with a weak point like that, you'll see the weapon kind of do a little explosion. That's when you press right R1 to get the precision axe combo, and the next throw that you do will have more frost damage onto it. And if you decide not to throw it, you can just use melee attacks and reap the melee bonus. It's one of those things that oh, what do we have here? Oh, it's a rare item, but it's for cooldown, so that's, cool. I really like the cooldown because I think the cooldowns are really lengthy in many of the cases, but if it's going to come at the expense of strength, probably not. If it's going to come at the expense of runic, then definitely just absolutely not going to trade that, because it's definitely not worth it. But anyway, this is the first area over here, and the checkpoint is down below, so you're gonna have to watch this every time. However, you don't need to kill many people to get the checkpoint, although with that said, there are a couple of heavies over here, so and they do give you a bit of rage too. So if you wanted to activate your rage, that's a good lad. I love when he does that, because it gives me a perfect opportunity to safely do my executioner's charge. But what I was saying is, if you want to use your rage to throw the boulders, and just maybe throw one, you can recover probably most of the lost rage that you did there, and it wouldn't be too much of a sacrifice. But anyway, now you get a checkpoint. Okay, so the rest of the fight over here is going to be well checkpointed, so you shouldn't have to worry. Wow, love that. Love when that happens. But I did wish everybody luck on this part. It really isn't too bad. You just have to really be careful of those guys that are lunging at you. And let's see if I can remember what's coming up over here. I cleared this fight last night, and then I didn't allow enough of the next part to transpire, and then I had to redo this fight. And this fight is kind of obnoxious, actually. So the charge of the white bear that I'm using for my light runic attack, that particular runic attack at full upgrade is one of the lower damage dealing moves, actually. I think the lowest one that I have now is the one that we got at the beginning of the game, Hell's Touch, which has like a 2 and 2 for damage and stun. But the Charge of the White Bear is not very powerful. But I really like the fact that that I could go right through enemies' attacks without taking damage. It's a little bit of a trade-off for me personally. So if that's something that appeals to you, I would try using it. You know, there are ones that deal more damage, and we're going to be getting one that deals a heck of a lot of damage in the next video. It's called Tears Revenge, but until I get it upgraded, I'm probably not going to use it. But I really do wish everybody the best, and I thank everybody for participating in the comments of the guide, because they really do sustain people, and they make people feel good, and they make people feel like, you know, you're worth watching on YouTube, because anybody can just post content. But when you think about it, it's not really the content itself that the people are coming back for in most cases. It's, you know, unless you're, you know, take an example of a YouTuber called, I mean, he was a former YouTuber called Shinobi. Or, you know, you watch his content and you watch Taz11's content purely because you want to be impressed and you want to learn, even though they don't commentate on their videos. But in most cases, you're coming back to listen because you care about the individual, and the fact that I'm cared for a single bit by complete strangers is really sustaining, and it makes me feel good, and I appreciate that. And I also want to thank very kindly the donator, and I don't want to mention people's names who donate anymore, just in case they would rather not be mentioned. Because he didn't want to donate in the conventional way, so I figured that he might not want to be mentioned. Because sometimes when I'm listening to videos, I kind of, you know, sometimes people want to be left alone and they want to remain anonymous. But I wanted to thank a recent donator for his generous donation. And, you know, things like that are just, you know, very, very appreciated and help the channel, and I could put those funds towards you know, a future project that anyone might be interested in. The only other one that I know of right now is Dark Souls Remastered, so I'm thinking about picking that up and doing something with it. I just want to see what it looks like, honestly. So you know how you're on top of these guys over here? I think my mistake in the past, remember earlier in the walkthrough when I mounted one of those guys? Because excepting for that one that we just fought, there's only been one other time during this walkthrough where we fought one of those enemies. Are they ogres or trolls? I can never get them. I can never remember. I think they're trolls. But my mistake last time, remember when I got flung off of it, it's probably because I wasn't pressing the square and triangle buttons long enough. And I thought that the ride was over, so to speak. And I got flung off, and I had to finish him off with other attacks. But anyway, that fight's done. I'm sorry if I didn't talk about that one directly. We have a really obnoxious fight coming up with this dragon. And this took me like an embarrassing amount of time earlier to do. It was like somewhere like within the space of like 3 hours I was able to do it. But I was just doing a lot of things on this particular day, coming back and, you know, leaving it on for a while and just coming back to it over a certain period of time. It was a warm day, and I was just doing a lot of other things, and I would just continually come back to the game, in part because I was busy, and also in part because it was just really making me frustrated. I'm never one to excuse poor gameplay, especially poor gameplay that I'm responsible for being a part of. But this boss fight is for some reason for me it's just hard, and I can blame it for being. I can say that it's awkward, and I can say that it's not made well, and I do believe that it is awkward, even if it is made well. And I have a hard time with it, and I think I just can't get past the awkwardness of it. But it's still made well, and you can do it no damage. I wasn't able to. Certain phases you might see me get through without getting hit, but it was only just luck, absolute luck. So you see what we're doing over here. We're using these shatter crystals to throw them at the dragon when he's imbibed himself with electricity. So the nice thing about this fight, though, is that as hard as it is, as debatably awkward as it is, it's very nicely checkpointed. So there's like 3 or 4 checkpoints, and the first phase over here, you're going to be using these shatter crystals to throw them at the dragon. But before you start to throw them at the dragon, you're going to have to go through a period of damaging him until you've reached a damage threshold, and then he's going to transition into imbibing himself with electricity and then starting to cast out that electricity to damage you. And on this first part of the fight, the entire floor is potentially a hot zone of potential damage that you can incur if you're not moving from one spot to another. And I've got to tell you, for some reason, you cannot use the lock-on. And the lock-on is something that I use a lot in this game, because it's very similar to Dark Souls. Lock-on helps you. Lock-on and strafe assist are very helpful tools. And this fight over here, for some reason, they don't let you lock on. So that was a little bit of a problem for me, trying to do this without using any feature of locking on. And I don't know, I really hope you have fewer problems than I did, because I had a hell of a lot of problems doing this. This was just obnoxious, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it is very poorly made. I can't. I don't just want to say that and excuse my gameplay. And if it is poorly made, we can just determine that in the future. But all right, now this part over here, and before I say anything, I just want to mention that this is incredibly difficult to narrate without it being in slow motion. But I'm going to put it in regular speed for you, because there's just so many things happening here. But I think as long as I tell you about the key things that you need to know, this shouldn't be too excruciatingly painful for you as it was for me. But I stand corrected. He is electrified at the beginning over here. So it's only when he's electrified himself, that is, imbibed himself with the electricity, that the shatter crystals will explode when you throw them at him. So you have to wait until he's electrified himself. So after you do a series of attacks on him, he's going to get to his feet. You need to stop hitting him, shield, and move away from his feet as he's moving across the area. Now, on this phase over here, you're just going to be hitting his claws until you've reached that damage threshold. The main thing you're going to see him do is rear back on his hind legs, fall forward on his four feet, and send out a shock wave that you need to block against. The chomp can be blocked, and when this transitions, you can either grab a shock crystal and throw it at him very quickly, but he's not likely to have imbibed himself with the electricity by then. And if you're guarding against a shockwave holding a shatter crystal, the shatter crystal will get destroyed and you'll have to pick up another one. So the protocol on this phase over here that we're at is you shield against the shockwave, and then you evade. You either evade and sprint, or a combination of those two things, over to the shatter crystal, you wanna kind of bait it though, so that it's not going to end up right next to the shatter crystal. Pick up the shatter crystal and throw it at him using the aimer. I have to use the aimer because you can find yourself throwing the shatter crystal in no even close direction to where he's at, and in no way does it even come close to hitting him. So it's frustrating. And the AOE's on the ground. If they haven't hit you, you're lucky, because I've got hit by them a lot. So you're going to be hitting him with 2 of these, and you want to wait until he's electrified. Otherwise, it's not going to explode. Okay, and then the next phase over here is quite similar to the phase that we just did, except that he's got a couple of claw attacks that cannot be blocked against, and there's a different pattern for when you're interacting with the shatter crystals. So fortunately, it's all nicely checkpointed. I'm trying to avoid taking damage, but it's very difficult to do that. So anything that looks like a slam or a swipe cannot be dodged, or excuse me, cannot be blocked. And at this point over here, when he gets past the damage threshold and you get him into this phase over here, here's the protocol. Like I said, you can either grab the shatter crystal before you even start to guard against the shockwave and just throw it, but he's probably not going to have electrified himself yet. So what I do is I just wait. I wait, and I'm patient. You block against the shockwave that he does, dodge away from this, dodge away from that, and then shield, because there's going to be a second shockwave coming at you. And if you don't think you're close enough to the shatter crystal, just don't even go after it and just wait for the next wave to pass. Okay, so just shield, dodge, shield, sprint to the shatter crystal, throw the shatter crystal at him, and then fell him. I fortunately didn't take damage over here, but this took a good hour. It was very frustrating. And maybe it was only a half an hour, but it always feels longer than it is. God, it's so difficult to narrate things like that. You guys have no idea. Just to do it is difficult, and then to come back and narrate it without elongating the footage is frustrating too. But fortunately, we're in the home stretch over here. We have ourselves resting on the final checkpoint over here. I'm not doing a very good job of dodging his attacks, but I don't really care at this point, because my main concern is just beating the fight. So on this last part over here, he's going to do this spray that you can see over here, and same deal. Just run after the shatter crystal, throw it, because he's going to be electrified, and there aren't going to be any shockwaves to deal with. So I just don't like this whole. I don't like this whole setup. It just doesn't feel very good, not at all. But if you've made it this far, I congratulate you. It's just no, on so many levels. It's just not good at all. I'm sorry, but it's just not good. And maybe it's that isn't good. I don't know. And sorry to say this, I don't care. Take care.